presidency of the Security Council for March as the month draws to a close. Thanks to your wisdom, your skill, and your qualities, your sterling qualities as a diplomat, you have successfully steered the work of this council. I also wish to thank your predecessor, Ambassador Fukong. He steered the council's work also equally successfully last month. The Democratic Republic of the Congo welcomes the detailed briefing delivered by the Special Representative of the Secretary General in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ms. Bintou Keita. We also welcome to our meeting the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Rwanda, His Excellency Mr. Olivier Nduhungirehe, and we welcome Madame Charlotte Slente of the Danish Refugee Council. She objectively detailed the hell and the bitter ordeal besetting the Congolese people in areas under control of the Rwandan army and the M23 AFC proxies. Today's statement will focus on the following 4 points: the report of the Secretary General on the situation in Eastern DRC, the implementation of Resolution 2773 of the Security Council, peace initiatives already underway, and the adoption of sanctions as measures with which to implement Resolution 2773 of the Security Council. Madam President, thousands of people have been killed. Thousands of people have been internally displaced. Entire cities have been devastated. Walikale, Kamanyola, Bunagana, Masisi-Centre, Goma, Minova, Ijwi, and Bukavu. In a humanitarian context which is chaotic on all fronts, the east of the DRC yet again offers a particularly distressing spectacle. The Secretary General's report, issued as document S/2025/176, has been circulated to your council, and it says the very same. Rwandan Defense Forces and the AFC M23 proxies have crossed our borders. They have occupied strategic locations, turfed people from their homes, and established a parallel administration. They continue to flagrantly violate, in so doing, the DRC's sovereignty. In its communiqué issued on the 15th of March 2025, the Ministry of the Interior, Security, Decentralization and Customary Affairs of the Democratic Republic of the Congo documented a series of atrocities perpetrated by the Rwandan Defense Forces and the M23 AFC proxies in North Kivu and South Kivu, this in violation of the relevant provisions of Resolution 2773, adopted on the 21st of February 2025. These acts have caused the huge loss of human life and mass destruction. The communiqué quite rightly documented that between the 10th and 14th of March 2025, there were 62 cases of targeted killings and summary executions in the areas under occupation. Moreover, there were 17 cases of violations and numerous cases of pillaging on the part of the Rwandan forces and their allies. Among the most striking incidents, the Rwandan army and the M23 AFC coalition staged a second incursion, I did say a second incursion, into the CBCA Ndosho hospital on the 10th of March. During that event, they abducted around 100 patients and healthcare workers who were later summarily executed. The communiqué aforementioned also reports the death of Mr. Fikri Mushuko Antoine, the head of the Mfui Matanda group. He was abducted from the CBCA Ondosho hospital on the 3rd of March and tortured for 7 days by Rwandan soldiers. Madam President, this alarming situation underscores the urgent need to implement to the letter the provisions of Resolution 2773 of the Security Council. This in order to put an end to the violence and protect the civilians in the regions affected. This bleak, unfortunate picture is being painted more than a month after the Security Council, through its Resolution 2773, unanimously called upon the Rwandan Defense Forces to withdraw immediately from the territory of the Democratic Republic of the Congo unconditionally. The resolution also demanded that they cease to support the M23. It too must withdraw from Goma, Bukavu, and all areas under their control, and entirely dismantle the illegitimate parallel administrations that have been established on the territory of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The unanimous adoption, says the Speaker, on the 21st of February 2025 of Resolution 2773 was a significant step forward in efforts to resolve the crisis and restore a lasting peace in the east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. This peace involves restoring the Congolese state's authority across all occupied provinces in North Kivu and South Kivu in their entirety. The resolution stands as a response to the security and humanitarian crises and challenges which are dealing a heavy blow to the people in the east of our country that for 30 years now have been in the grips of violence. The text is also an expression of clear and explicit support from the international community to the efforts taken by the AU, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, SADC, and the East African Community. Far from hindering African initiatives, Resolution 2773 strengthens and supplements them. The extent and persistent nature of the aforementioned violence suggests that we can no longer allow this crisis to drag on for eternity, claiming that an African problem requires an African solution. Doing that would be to betray the spirit of international solidarity, which is the very bedrock of the United Nations collective security system. Now is the time to recall that the Democratic Republic of the Congo legitimately expects this council to resolutely and diligently finish the work it started here on the 21st of February 2025, work to protect international peace and security in accordance with the tenets of the United Nations Charter. In other words, the Council must now implement Resolution 2773. That is and must be a priority. To date, no Rwandan soldier has withdrawn from the DRC's territory. No element of the M23 AFC coalition has withdrawn from Goma or Bukavu, nor from any other area under control, and no parallel administration, illegitimate parallel administration indeed, has been dismantled. On the contrary, every day we're seeing the positions held by the RDF M23 AFC coalitions growing stronger. They tirelessly continue their expansionist and criminal agenda. They are hungry to defy the Security Council's will in so doing, and through their actions they are killing peace-building efforts undertaken by regional leaders, including those of the AU, SADC, and the ERC, as well as others by the international community as a whole. After having established a parallel administration in Goma in North Kivu and in Bukavu in South Kivu, the RDF AFC M23 coalition extended its territorial conquest to the Walikale territory in North Kivu and to Mwenga in South Kivu. And this happened at a time when appeals were growing in number for a ceasefire. This means that the aforementioned coalition is brazenly impertinent in violating its own ceasefire. Worse still, this coalition is now maliciously transplanting non-indigenous populations under the guise of refugee return, and that has paved the way for interethnic tensions, which we're very likely to see in the future. The coalition has also readied itself to sell off DRC's monetary sovereignty by looking to appoint a parallel banking regulation system and a parallel central bank. This is true if we are to believe statements made to the press by the coalition's leader on the 22nd of March. Madam President, the DRC wishes to thank and congratulate His Excellency João Manuel Rosso, President of the Republic of Angola. He demonstrated resolute commitment in his role as AU-appointed mediator for the conflict which is pitting the DRC against Rwanda. Contrary to the recalcitrance of Rwanda, the DRC is highly committed, as is its head of state, His Excellency Félix Antoine Tshisekedi Tshilombo. We are committed to the peace initiatives of the AU and sub-regional economic commissions. That commitment is unswerving. Our support extends to the joint SADC-EAC summit that adopted the report on the conclusions of the ministerial summit held on the 17th of March in Zimbabwe. That summit also ordered the implementation of the roadmap. The Luanda process, designed to offer a framework within which to achieve a peaceful resolution to the conflict, was sabotaged by Rwanda's stubbornness. Every commitment that they entered into in Luanda has been ridden roughshod over time and time again. Her Excellency Madame Therese Kwalikamba Wagner, Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation and Francophonie of the DRC, reiterated time and time again before this council a few weeks ago the fact that since the establishment of the enhanced ad hoc verification mechanism in Goma in November 2025, Rwanda has not once sent its 3 military experts to oversee the implementation of the ceasefire. On the 15th of December 2024, Rwanda knowingly sabotaged the summit convened by the facilitator of this process, His Excellency João Lourenço, by ignoring his invitation to the meeting. Moreover, on the 23rd of January, Rwanda surprised the entire world by requesting that Turkey act as mediator. In so doing, they strayed from the principle African solutions to African problems. As we might have expected, Rwanda and its proxies, who said that they swore only by direct negotiations between the RDC and AFC M23, were the first to boycott the Luanda meeting on the 18th of March. Despite this flagrant disregard shown by Rwanda for peace processes underway, the Democratic Republic of the Congo remains fully committed and reiterates its trust in any and all peace processes supported by the African Union to bring about a political solution to the conflict between the DRC and Rwanda. Two subregions, SADC and the EAC, have held joint meetings to adopt urgent measures, including a ceasefire. As far as the African Union is concerned, its Peace and Security Council met at heads of state level on the 14th of February. It called for the immediate withdrawal of all uninvited foreign forces from DRC, in other words, Rwanda. Rwanda and the M23 responded and continue to respond with violence, with terror. Indiscriminate, systematic violence continues to be seen. The victims of that violence hail from all ethnic groups and are of all political colours. We are seeing the rapid deterioration of the situation on the ground, and many stakeholders have reacted by doing what they do best. They've documented human rights violations, paving the way for criminal prosecutions. This is robust action, but is reactive rather than preemptive. Madam President, on a different note, we cannot lose sight of the fact that the speedy, gradual, ordered and responsible withdrawal of MONUSCO continues to be in sync with the logic underpinning the disengagement note co-signed on the 21st of November 2023 by the government of the DRC and MONUSCO. It was endorsed by the Security Council pursuant to Resolution 2717 of the 19th of December. There was momentum for disengagement, which began in South Kivu on the 25th of June 2024. It was brutally deflated following attacks on FARDC and MONUSCO positions by the RDF AFC M23 coalition. However, parties remain committed to the comprehensive implementation of the joint disengagement plan on the humanitarian track now. Paragraphs 49 to 53 of the Secretary General's report confirm that the situation is a devastating one, a situation incidentally worsened greatly by RDF M23 AFC attacks. Against this backdrop, one of our major challenges remains mobilizing remaining funds to meet colossal need. We take this opportunity to reiterate our appeal to donors. We ask them to step up their efforts to plug the funding gap. More or less 93% of the funding needed is still lacking. The humanitarian response plan for 2025 was launched jointly on the 27th of February by the government and its partners. It seeks to assist more or less 11 million people of the 21.2 million that currently are in need. The estimated budget stands at $2.54 billion, but has only been financed to date to the tune of 7%. Madam President, as regards the human rights track, my government wishes to draw the Council's attention to the continued worsening of the human rights situation in areas under the control of the RDF M23 AFC coalition. In particular, certain worrying incidents have been corroborated in the Secretary General's report. I request you to peruse paragraphs 35 to 40. Several other human rights and IHL violations were reported as having been perpetrated by the RDF M23 AFC coalition. Here I'd recall in this connection the killing of at least 126 people in areas controlled by M23 since the 26th of January, abductions of civilians, forced recruitment of young people, including children, and the fact that they've been subjected to forced labor in Goma and the surrounding area. I'd also point to the unilateral destruction and dismantling by the aforementioned coalition of internally displaced camps that were havens protected by the UN in North Kivu and South Kivu. Several other cases are worthy of mention, of course. Targeted attacks by way of reprisals against women activists, human rights defenders, sexual and gender-based violence, and attacks against peacekeepers, MONUSCO peacekeepers. We cannot ignore these incidents. In view of the horror and the climate of terror described above, my delegation urges the Council to face the truth. There is an urgent need to rapidly move to the implementation of the provisions of Resolution 2773. An effective cessation of hostilities and de-escalation will not be possible until increased pressure is brought to bear, or until there are more robust sanctions against Rwanda and its M23 AFC allies. Madam President, I would be remiss if I did not recall before your Council that as we meet here, Rwanda has more than half of its army deployed on the territory of the DRC. And this has occurred without the consent of the Congolese state. The right to self-defense cannot be invoked as a justification for an armed invasion, nor for the creation of parallel administrations on the territory of a sovereign state. These acts, in and of themselves, are grave violations of the United Nations Charter, the Constitutive Act of the African Union, and of Resolution 3314 of the UN General Assembly, dated 14th of December 1974. Madam President, it's not my job to recall that when the Council unanimously adopted its Resolution 2773 on the 21st of February, a significant number of Council members stated that they would ensure that it was implemented in its entirety. They stated then that the Council reserved the right to contemplate the imposition of other measures were the resolution not fully implemented. My delegation is of the view that the Council measures envisaged for such circumstances must include a series of sanctions. The most pressing of these are as follows. 1. Due to Rwanda's persistent refusal to comply with Resolution 2773, the Security Council should firmly condemn this blatant violation and consider submitting to the International Court of Justice a request for an advisory opinion in accordance with the provisions of Article 96 of the United Nations Charter. Moreover, the Council should study the implementation of a reinforced mechanism to monitor the implementation of Resolution 2773, with gradually more stringent coercive measures being put in place in the case of continued non-compliance. 2. Establish a regime of sanctions applicable to Rwanda and its leaders. 3. Impose an arms embargo on Rwanda until it ceases its support for M23 and until it totally withdraws its army from the DRC's territory. 3. Call upon the 1533 DRC Sanctions Committee to be guided by Operative Paragraph 9 of Resolution 2773 to implement a gamut of UN sanctions, this in accordance with Resolution 2293 of 2016. Sanctions that should be imposed namely against people thought to be perpetuating conflict in the eastern DRC. 4. Establish a regime of much more severe sanctions to be imposed on M23 AFC, given excessive human rights violations perpetrated in the areas under their occupation. 3. To heed the request made in letters submitted by the DRC to the Security Council and the UN Secretary General. That letter saw my government call for the withdrawal of Rwanda's status as a TCC contributing to peacekeeping missions of the United Nations, because it is not worthy of that status. Finally, decry and sanction the involvement of Rwandan authorities in the illegal exploitation of natural resources, both mining and agricultural resources, owned by the DRC. Before I conclude, I must reiterate my government's thanks and the thanks of the DRC's people to the states and institutions that have courageously imposed sanctions against Rwanda. This includes the US, the UK, Germany, Canada, the European Union in general, and France, Belgium, Slovenia, and Greece in particular. Finally, we must here recognize that sanctions in the cases of the Great Lakes crisis are not counterproductive. It is for this reason we encourage the Security Council and other peace-loving states to follow suit. Thank you.
I thank the representative.